Adoption to me is just the check that I'm cutting to you each month. Whatever my vendor is, that I'm paying for the seats that I have or the loans that go through your platform. What I care about as an organization when we're looking at ROI is utilization.
Hello, everyone. If this is your first time joining us, welcome to the Mortgage Innovators podcast, where we deliver fresh and hopefully entertaining insights on all things mortgage technology and the innovation propelling our industry forward. My name is Dave Zitting with Avenue Technologies, makers of the IntraLend platform. And every Tuesday, you can find our rotating group of co-hosts, or what our producers have dubbed the Innovative Five, who all share their own unique connection to the industry. This week, we have joining us Sue with Total Expert.
Hey, everybody.
Margaret with Caliber Home Loans.
Hi, Dave.
Hello. And Michael with American Pacific Mortgage.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And a quick shout out to our sponsor. Qualia is the category creating digital closing platform used by thousands of lenders across the country to seamlessly work with their title and escrow partners. By working better together, Qualia is powering lenders to deliver a differentiated closing experience for their clients through real-time communication, closing status updates, and workflow management. Qualia brings lenders together with homeowners and home sellers and home buyers, title and escrow agents, and real estate agents for a secure and seamless closing experience. Qualia is proud to have been awarded the Housing Wire Tech 100 Award for real estate, as well as CB Insights FinTech 250 Award. Discover how you can work more efficiently with your title and escrow partner at qualia.com/innovators. That's QUALIA.com/innovators. Today, I have a great opportunity to collaborate with you guys on a really big topic. We're exploring or more wrestling with the age-old challenge and strategies surrounding technology adoption. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And in an attempt to kind of narrow this down, this incredibly broad topic down, we thought it'd be best to focus today on technologies that are more endemic to sales, kind of growth-centric technologies and or organizations. And we'll dial it into a few different organization types as well. But for the most part, we thought we'd focus on sales technologies, point of sale sort of strategies, mobile tech, consumer engagement, collaboration, growth collaboration within the different major silos within our industry, that sort of stuff. So we'll shy away a bit from kind of the back-end technologies for this discussion, an example being kind of your traditional loan operating system, mainly due to the fact that an adoption behavior is not always required when it's an essential mandatory system that the company cannot function without. In those cases, the enterprise has the ability to really put their foot down and have policy driven around adoption and timelines for such a thing. So today, focusing on kind of growth related, strategy related, collaboration related technologies and the behaviors behind getting this incredible entrepreneurial style industry we like to call the individuals, the specialists, these intrapreneurs. How do we engage them? How do we get them excited? How do we create behaviors and messaging results to really be able to take this big investment that enterprises make, and or maybe even individual teams, and really get that adoption and usage so that we can create more profit. So great, let's start there, you guys. And I know you guys all have a lot of great thoughts behind this. So Sue, I'm going to kick it over to you first, and let's just throw it out there. What do you find in this sort of behavior and this sort of strategy?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple real specifics. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart because it is something that we're working on and wrestling with all the time. And I also can say that having been an originator for many years, I was one of those originators that was like, oh, I don't have time to take on, one more thing. Don't make me learn something else, right? And nothing frustrates me more. And anybody who's been in this conversation with me will attest to this. I don't like to hear people say, oh, loan officers are so lazy. I think loan officers are some of the least lazy people that I've ever met in my entire life. 100% commission. They're hunters, right? So I don't like when people say, oh, they're so lazy, they won't do these things. No, no, no. That just means you don't understand their motivations and you're not approaching it in the right way. So I'll just share a couple of best practices that I've seen. And then I can't wait to hear what the rest of the gang says as well. I think the first and most important thing is kind of the old WIIFM, right? The what's in it for me, is making sure that when you're talking about a new technology to adopt, what does it do for me? Look at it from that loan officer standpoint and say, what is it going to do for them? Not there's this thing that does this thing and you have to do this to do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Say, this is going to supercharge your relationships with your realtors are going to be dying to hear more about how they can partner with you on this thing. And it's going to drive a lot more business in this purchase market. That's how to approach it. What's the outcome? Second thing that I've seen work incredibly well is some competition, some gamification. So if you start kind of rewarding those folks who are really embracing something like that and having, that's one of the things, again, I love about loan officers. They're competitive and they get their juices flowing when you kind of gamify it and raise up the people who are doing really, really well with it. Calling out those top producers who have embraced it, or the people that are really seeing results and telling those stories, again, kind of gets those competitive juices flowing, where when you see that, man, Michael over there is having these incredible results, Margaret's going to say, oh, I want to have those results, right? So you raise up those stories. I'd also say find your special producers. Sometimes your special producers, if I asked anybody listening to this, if you think about your top 5 producers, they probably all do their businesses really differently. Help them in a little different way, right? So that they can be those, those big superheroes for you, and that you can raise up success stories by somebody who's really respected in your organization, but respecting the fact that they've got probably something that's working really well, and how do you make this new technology work within the way that they're running their business successfully. And the last thing I'd say is that in a lot of cases, leaders just need to lead. A lot of times I hear leaders say, well, we'll put these things out there and we'll just kind of leave it for them to decide if they want to opt in or not. A busy loan officer never wants to opt into anything, right? They're doing their thing, they're running the game, they're busy, they're doing all the things that you want them to do. And so sometimes you do need to come in as a leader and just say, this is what we're doing. And it's going to be amazing. We're all going to do this together and it's going to look like this. And we're going to be here to help you. So it's both bottom up and sometimes it's also top down. So those are kind of my greatest hits on what I've seen work from in the belly of the beast of adoption on technology.
That's really cool. So Sue, I have a couple of quick questions for you on that front. You expressed these like in a way, in my mind, that you literally are attacking those 8 points. I think I counted 8. And I might have missed one. I apologize if I did, but you threw those out there as very tactical things that you are working with these organizations on a daily basis, really. And I really loved how that rolled off so fast. And obviously that comes with great experience in many platforms in the sales organization and collaboration sort of growth strategies that you've been involved in. Do you, as a technology firm, do you approach organizations with this sort of playbook up front to say, hey, look, this is how we got to approach this?
Yep.
If you really want to go take on this next level technology or this next level strategy and whatnot, is there some qualification that you do as a tech vendor to say, do we have an organization that has the capabilities of being able to go in, respect the originator? To your point, I totally agree with you. Very hardworking individuals, especially now, 7 days a week. And when finding out, can you get the time from the originator, whoever the adopter is, and can the organization culturally get together from top down, bottom up, and really go to the next level and then move forward? Is that what you guys look for?
Spot on. Yeah, spot on. And I would say people that are talking to any technology vendor, it's a question you should always ask is, do you have best practices that you're going to be able to share with me on, how we're going to get ROI, how we're going to get success, how we're going to get that adoption and engagement. And I think the questions a great technology vendor is going to ask of a potential customer is, do you have both the leadership, do you have the alignment at a leadership level to be able to really drive this, or is it splintered where some people are going to make, kind of take a certain approach and other people are going to take a different approach, or can you be aligned? And then do you also have the internal staff and support to be able to actually do it, right? I mean, Michael, you can probably, speak very well to that. I know a lot about, your organization and kind of how you approach this with the technology stack that you offer.
Yeah, I think it's funny because that's actually what I was, making little notes, and I was like, oh, you hit on so many points that, I think like Dave mentioned, I mean, you hit on a ton of points that are all super valid when you're talking about the adoption. But yeah, a couple things, that are important, when I think about it is also too, is it a brand new technology rolling out, or is it something that you're replacing? And I do think that there is actually a slightly different strategy, at least as it relates to us here, at APM, is how we approach it with we're replacing something. It's like get out there, acknowledge where we might have ran into some pitfalls, why we're pivoting, so that you're really rebuilding that trust back up with your sales staff. I think the way that Dave mentioned at the beginning, we're talking about entrepreneurs. These are entrepreneurs that are out there grinding, making their business every single day. So, what is in it for them? How is this going to be different than the last thing that, you rolled out, and why are we pivoting? And I think that that's really important because I think that just, it's such a relational industry, and, having that trust, between the originators and us as an organization is really, really important in my book. I think, Sue briefly mentioned it, but the internal resources, I think sometimes I think a company has to ask themselves too, what does adoption mean to them? Because one of the arguments that I always make is adoption versus utilization. Adoption to me is just the check that I'm cutting to you each month, whatever my vendor is. That I'm paying for the seats that I have or the loans that go through your platform. What I care about as an organization when we're looking at ROI is utilization. What's going out through the system, what are they actually logging into the system and doing, or having set up, to Sue's point, automated, where it's acting on their behalf. So even if you don't log in, I can still show you the success metrics or the people that you're touching, even though you're not actually logging in and doing anything. And so for me, that's where it's even a bigger deal is really the utilization aspect of it. And then us having those internal resources and not just putting the onus on our vendor partners. And I think that that's something that's happened in the past too, where it's like, hey, we're not getting the adoption that we thought we were going to get on this. Like, what are you guys doing wrong? And it's like, no. Like, we're in this together. Like, we have the trust of our LOs. They interact with us every day, so we can't just put it on, our vendor partner to, be the one that's spamming them with emails saying, yeah, come and register for this. Like, we have to drive that behavior.
Right. Very good.
And Dave, I love what Michael said, because I feel like the success it starts at the top. And I love, how would we know that we were successful? You said it, Michael. What does success mean? How are we going to measure it? And then I think maybe even adding to the best practices is some type of a standard practice that actually shows the progress that's being made. Sometimes we're in the weeds and we don't realize. I always liken it to climbing a mountain. You climb every day, and you just think, gosh, I'm never going to get there. And then you turn around and you're just blown away by how much progress you've made. And I think we all need those. So I would add that to the standard practice. And then I love the gamification that you said, Sue, and the competition. I was thinking about that a great way to make something successful is incent. Whether that's good old greenery, do re mi, or whether it's some type of something else that the production people would care about. Maybe their file goes to the top of the list, or to the top of the line and gets underwritten faster. And then I was also thinking about how we have to, the executive leadership has to lead. It's not just, hey, we're doing this. It's not a good idea. It's to the degree that if these applications are relevant for the executive leadership, they also are held accountable to using them. So anyway, those were some of the thoughts I had. Triggered by Sue and Michael.
No, it's good stuff.
Those are great thoughts. And Sue, you did a fantastic job of framing it up for us and all of that. And we were all coming back to these kind of main points. And Michael, you and Margaret, you both put some great ones on there. I also really loved what was talked about. And this is something that we find here at Avenue, is that it's just crucial, to your point, Sue, to really find those top producers, those influencers. They become very celebrity-like in their organizations, and that's something in anything that I've done is you really want to kind of bolt in with them, make sure there's a great relationship. And I think that's a really great way for leaders, especially in our industry where you definitely have the 80-20 rule, sometimes the 90-10 rule, but you really want to be able to get in there, bolt in with those top players, those influencers, and make sure that it's totally understood, totally good for them. You've answered all of these key questions. Another big question that originators have is, look, I'm swamped. How difficult is it for me to adopt it? And you got to be able to demonstrate that it's not. It's quite easy. It's very dynamic. It's going to weave very nicely into what you do every day. And we're going to, Michael, to your point, here's why we're doing it. Here's why we're either adding this as a strategy, or here's why we're pivoting a little bit, because we're always trying to make it to where you can get more throughput. And this is really important to the organization. The other thing that I'd like some of your opinion on, you guys, is the type of organizations. I think that makes a huge difference in adoption. And we can look at my experience in running like mortgage teams has been with a distributed retail organization. And so in a distributed retail organization, it's very, very different than an institutionalized organization, in that you have the entity is really in place, the company is really in place to serve the sales teams out in the marketplace. And so that's kind of like the customer constituency. And then of course the mortgage customer is their customer, which is kind of a second one in line for the entity. And there's a lot of gray area there, but we all understand what the dynamics are there. So in that case, in that sort of a distributed retail organization, we do have a sales role as leaders, right? We've got to get out to those influencers, we got to get out to the groups, and we have to say, look, we understand you're running a business within a business. Here's why we need you or want you to do these things. So versus an institutional organization, maybe a depository bank, a very large credit union network, maybe a retail organization that just absolutely has just got it all buttoned down to, nope, this is how we do things and here's where we go. I'd love to hear some experience, kind of new, modern, contemporary experience on that front and what you guys are seeing in that space as well.
I'm going to share just real quickly on that front. You know, I would say that part of it is really about, again, it's as you said, it's about leadership and how you're leading. And it's not for, you know, saying, everybody is what we're going to do, but it is about leadership. And I do think even in, you know, my experience has been is that even in very large, successful distributed retail, there still are some basics that, you know, a company and a leadership should want in place in order to even protect their brand. It can't be just like a free for all. Everybody's using everything. I don't know. Let's see it all work out. You know that you want to have, for example, you know, if you look at it from like an automated marketing standpoint, you know, you want to have certain communications happening, you know, during the loan process. You know, you want your customer to have a certain experience when they're applying for the loan and able to upload their documents. And so I think there are some basics that really have to be put in place. And sometimes I look at it as, and I think I can say this because I was an originator, sometimes you kind of have to almost as a leader, you almost have to be the parent and say, you know what, we're gonna all eat the broccoli. And and I know that it's more fun to, like, I get it, and we want to give you all the options and the Fruit Loops and everything else, but sometimes we need to eat the broccoli and the meat and get your protein, and this is what this has to look like. And again, I don't say that, I can say that having been an originator and been a person who is kind of like, I don't necessarily want to do this stuff, but there is a baseline of things that just from an experience, a customer experience standpoint, from a branding standpoint, from just having the basics in place, that it does need to be a leadership that says, hey, at least these, okay, these other things we can talk about if you want to, do those things, not do those things. How deep do you want to go? But I do think there's a level of just running in a business and having a referral partner experience, a customer experience, and an employee experience that's got consistency.
Great points. Great points. Guys, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I think what Sue said is spot on. At a certain point, as much as it is an entrepreneurial, mindset, your originators have still chosen to partner with your company for a reason. It's that value proposition that you're bringing. So on some of it is, hey, you're able to go and do unique things in all of these other stages. But, when it comes to, milestone updates throughout the loan process, we have to, as a company, create a consistent workflow to all of the borrowers, to all of the customers. So I think it's some of those keys of putting the why behind the what as well. We're doing this because, in this day and age, consistent communication is key. You can still have all these other touch points that you're reaching out to them, but like at these 6 stages, we feel that it's super important that the clients are getting these messages. I also think the other piece of that too is not only getting those top producers at the adoption stage, but also at the decision-making stages of what you're choosing to go with. I think that that's the key importance, because then when you're starting that rollout process, it's, hey, we have this advisory council of these top producers that are your peers, and they voted on this product or this vendor for these reasons. Because then you're already building the trust, and it's not a kind of top-down like corporate mentality. It's like, okay, we had a seat at the table in making that decision, which I think is, extremely important.
Yeah, I agree with that, Michael, 100%. And in that process, again, depending on what sort of organization that you're running, sometimes those technologies find the company long before leaders do. And It's because the vendor sales process on the technology side has worked so well. All of a sudden, these entrepreneurial thinkers are adopting things kind of on the side. And you're starting to see more and more billing going out to these vendors, and it's starting to pop up more in questions and weekly meetings and different things like that. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. This is the path we were going down, but everybody's kind of organically adopting this thing over here. So a collaboration is important, but also sort of that it's just being adopted, on the side. Yep. And oh, we better catch up as an organization. I think we see that happening in some sorts of organizations. Margaret, any thought on that?
Yeah, well, what Michael's comments really triggered for me is it's really a project that, when you are rolling out any type of technology or new process, it's worthy of a project plan. One of the episodes we talked about that. How do you select a technology vendor? And Michael, I think you were saying you all at American Pacific, very, very rigorous, and you have a project plan around all of that. Mm-hmm. And I think that would drive best practices, that would drive standard practices. And so I think almost thinking about how do you successfully roll out something, looking at it from the framework of a project could just ensure even more success.
Yeah.
Yep, I like that.
Yeah, and for us, and I know, several others, and I know Dan's brought this up before too, what we try to do is when we are partnering with them, what is their standard adoption percentage with the companies that they've partnered with before? I think, again, Dave, to your point, depending on the company, us, we're fully distributed retail. We run enterprise models, lots of, DBAs, where they really kind of have their own, processes in place. So, honestly, we're not normally looking for 100% adoption, because we just know that, there's people that already have their full systems built out. But what on average is this company's adoption percentage with the people that they have set up already? And then we kind of use that as our baseline. We'll even do general kind of surveys out to our branches or at our branch manager meetings and kind of gauge interest or feedback. And you actually hit it on the head, Dave. Most of the time, these vendors are introduced to us by our originators because they already have a relationship with them. So we're not necessarily going out on the search. It normally kind of gets presented like, hey, I noticed that we have this gap, and I know this guy that works here. And so,
I'm not waiting for corporate. I went and filled my gap.
Exactly. And then we can piggyback and then scale.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I totally agree with that. And again, of course, on the much more institutional side of the world, you are attracting a much more institutional originator or whoever it might be in the team. And when the institution shows up and says, "We'd like you to do this," there's a very predictable behavior there. Oh, that's what we're doing. Okay, because it's packaged more institutional, and they tend to attract that more institutional individual versus somebody that the organization is saying, look, we know you wake up every day brushing your teeth knowing you're unemployed until you make a sell, and you're going to hone those skills and you're going to do this magic every day. It's tough to really promote and support that while at the same time say corporate coming back and saying, guys, we need you to adopt this tech and everybody use it. It's like, It's a little bit of a square peg round hole from a personality standpoint. And I totally get that. Well, let's jump into the weeds just a little bit more. Well, we've got a few more minutes here. And another thing, Michael, that you said that I absolutely appreciate, and we measure here at Avenue with a very deep set of KPIs, is kind of initial adoption versus utilization. The ongoing usage of it, and what's trending and what's happening and whatnot. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on, it's been adopted, somebody drank the Kool-Aid, and everybody's rah-rah about this cool thing that's helping us get more loans, right? And I'm going to even say close more loans, because that's all that makes us money, right?
Yep.
And so we're closing more loans, we're making more money, and what do we do as organizations to be able to pull KPIs, evidence, proof, facts out of the transaction, out of the end result, to say that helped us close that loan. This new tech helped us close that loan, so you need to keep using it. And then take that and share it with the next person and say, look, we now have proof and evidence that this helped us close the loan, and you need to do it. It's really difficult to do that in the housing industry in general, especially within this mortgage operation that has just got so many gears going on. How do you point to this technology helped us make more money on this loan, so you need to do it again?
I'll just start by saying I think what you've identified is another area that there's a lot of room for improvement, and that is gathering metrics and then being very diligent and disciplined around using them. And there's nothing more powerful than being able to make a case for something. It's basically a hypothesis or a speculation, and then having all the KPIs behind it. And I think you get a lot of momentum and collaboration when you do that. And I think one of the things is we just have to get better at tracking the metrics. Sometimes we're tracking metrics and we don't quite know how we're going to use them yet.
Yeah.
And I think that's got to be part of the rigor that we bring to our game every day at whatever role we are in the organization. It's always the responsibility of the leadership. And I think that to the degree that they continue to underscore the importance of utilization and then respect their teams and their employees enough to say, this is why I think it matters. And then, the the specifics of what metrics you use, that depends, but we have to get good at collecting them and then being able to understand how do we use them.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. I think where it gets difficult too is where sometimes you have multiple systems, right? So pulling all of those data points into one centralized place to almost show, okay, this is how all of these work together, because you might have, it's hard sometimes to say, okay, what was the impact of, this, did this flyer that I sent to this borrower actually cause them to come and do a loan with me? And so we can look at it from maybe the corporate side and say, yeah, it did. And then the loan officer's like, I would have picked up the phone and landed that deal with or without that flyer.
You can't say that it was the flyer. It was because they saw this beautiful smiling face.
Right. So where we even say we use kind of like conversion and like correlation reports, where it's like, okay, I can't necessarily say, I don't want to make you upset. I'm not going to say that what we did caused that loan to come in the door. However, we can correlate that there was no application before this event happened. And whenever they applied, it was after these 2 emails went out. And I think it's then taking it from a single loan officer and then really looking at it globally and saying, on average, how many touch points is it between, first interaction with the client and application? How many days on average is it from the date that first, marketing campaign goes out to when the loan is actually closing? And so I think it's kind of reverse engineering some of those data points. And to your point, Margaret, that's not the loan officer's responsibility. Any company that thinks that that's the LO's responsibility, to manage and track and come up with that, I personally think is missing the mark. That's our job, I think, as again, who they've chosen to partner with, is to share those data points, and that's been a struggle, I think, industry wide, that we're just starting to get to now, where we're able to really collect all of these data points, use some of the various business intelligence softwares to kind of formulate and create kind of these reports to show, okay, between each of these, we have 11 technology tools that we're using here, and that doesn't even include Encompass, so it's like those are the types of things where it's like, where can we consolidate everything and then give them kind of that big picture view of how they all impact one another and ultimately either create efficiencies or help them produce more loans.
Yeah, those are such great points, Michael. Totally agree. And you think of strategy on that front, and you think of how quickly the market is changing. For a company that would have adopted a marketing technology right before COVID, and interest rates drop, and now they're funding all these mortgages, and the technology firm comes back and says, see, that was awesome. And you're like, well, hold on. Interest rates were very helpful, and then we've got all of our seasonal changes, and we got all these different things. So even if you were to, let's say, to your point, Michael, in the reverse engineering, or another strategy would be the pre-measurement and then the post-measurement, right? So you kind of get your group together and you say, okay, we're going to pre-measure this, and we're going to see how effective it is, and we're actually going to do consumer exit interviews. Why didn't you work with us? Why did you work with us? And did this have anything to do with it? And we can bring all of that information together. And there's some ways we can quantitatively and qualitatively get some more information. A lot of work, we never have time to do it. And I think that is probably one of the big problems in the industry as well, is that we all try to cram 15-hour days into 10. But I think that we really do need to be thoughtful about that as an industry. We need to figure out a game plan before we adopt, so that we can make an agreement with the user up front to say, look, we need you to get on board, and this is what we're going to do. Here's what we know today, and here's what we think we're going to know tomorrow, and here's all the different ways we're going to measure it. The other thing I wanted to think about here for a minute is the same desire that, say, a big HQ would have for both of you in your organizations. If you look at your big divisions, they're like these massive organizations in their own right, and that leader has the same exact desire that you have, and they're coming up with all of their strategies of making it work. Some are more influential than others. But what I've always found interesting is that there's not enough, hey, we all want the same thing sort of meeting going on. We all need to measure the same stuff, and we all need to put our, same shoulder against the same wheel and get pushing. I do find that our industry is so dynamic and so entrepreneurial that you tend to have kind of motivations and, oh, I really think we should do it this way, Itis. And I think it's important that as we put technology to work, and however we find the best one that fits that organization and culture, the end result needs to be more throughput, profitability. I really do feel like if we could just force the time and put that sort of stuff together and really work together cohesively in these, in these really complex organizations, I think that there could be more throughput from that as well. From a granular standpoint, looking at like the technology as it relates to weaving into, Michael, you mentioned there's 11 other platforms, and they may have added one today you don't know about. I always found that to be the case. And so you've got all these things. We already talked about continuity and those sort of things coming together. Is there any sort of work that you guys do to say in adopting of a technology, you've got the RFP done, you've adopted it, you have your influencers and everybody's there, and you launch it. Do you guys do any work to find out how that might work with all of these other systems? And post launching it, is there anything tripping anything up across the platform?
And for us, we actually do that even during the process. So I mean, honestly, when we're looking at like a new vendor, we normally go to our existing vendor partners and say, hey, do you guys by chance integrate with this, this group? Or if not, what would it take to integrate? Because we are getting to that point where we're trying to get additional functionality and options, but not additional logins. And I think that's a key that, I think any originator would be like, no more passwords, no more logins, please. So, for us, some of it is, is there a way to integrate it with an existing platform we have where we can still get the advantage of that functionality or that service that they're providing, but again, consolidate it into one, central place. And then, and it is that ongoing, thing of, rollout, kind of checking in, getting feedback, what improvements do we need to make on it, going out, doing, road shows, going out on the road to our various branches, not just doing things, web-based, just all those various, ways to get in front of people to make sure that they know, the value it's bringing, getting testimonials from those influencers and top producers, as you've mentioned. Those are key, key things. And then again, really having those stats. I can think of one instance for us is when we rolled out about a year and a half ago now, the ability to deliver disclosures through our mobile devices. And so some of the stats that we pulled up is, okay, when we're delivering it through email, how long on average is it taking the borrowers to complete those disclosure packages? And then how long is it taking them to complete it through our mobile devices? And, within a very short window, we could see, okay, on average, it's about 2 days to get them to complete their disclosures through email, whereas we're under 3 hours on the mobile device. And now we can take those stats to people and we're like, yo, don't just take our word for it. Like, here is the actual, proof. And then it's like, okay, then if you still don't want to use it, then it's really just a preference that you have, and, to each their own, but we at least have then the stats to support the decision that we made and why we were pushing it so hard.
Yeah, that is such a perfect example of what we're referring to earlier. And you get a client to lock in like that in 3 hours versus a whole day where you're just, hoping. That is incredibly valuable. That's a KPI that no sales manager can ignore, right? And so you can really leverage that to take it to the next level. That's super cool. Well, Michael, absolutely awesome session today. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Sue and Margaret had to jump off, but it has been such a pleasure to collaborate with you guys today. Certainly want to take a minute to thank our audience for listening to us, listening to the episode today. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe to the Mortgage Innovators YouTube channel or wherever you podcast. And until next time, see you then.